or their family moved or something like that. People just didn't leave because they loved it so much. And even if they could have got more money somewhere else, they didn't. And the students were all so happy here, right from the get-go. The Alton students and the Barnstead students just blended so well. You didn't know who came from where. And it was just absolutely wonderful being here. That is my opinion. But I'm looking at why there are so many people. All of a sudden, it seems like, I don't know, because I don't know all that much about it. It just seems like an awful lot of people leaving. And because I worked with some of those people, and I know how good that they were, and I just can't figure it out. I also think it's going to be a little bit tough for a little while for the students, because high school students in particular, and younger ones, very often have a person they choose when they have an academic problem or a personal problem that they go to. Typically, it's a counselor. It's somebody in the guidance office, usually, but not always. Sometimes it's the principal they've developed a rapport with. Could be a teacher, social studies, whatever subject. But they do, and you know, with the entire administration and guidance turning over, of course they'll get there, but it's going to take them a while. I think it's going to be tough for some of them for a little bit. But my basic question is, why so many all at once? And it seems so sudden. Again, I don't work here, and I don't know a lot. But I have to ask the question, living here in town, I feel a responsibility to at least ask. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other input?
Good evening. My name is Charlotte DeJager. I'm a former Prospect Mountain employee, and I've been an Alton resident for 27 years. During that 27 years, I have dipped my foot into the waters of school politics under 2 administrations. The only other time period that I was compelled to be involved was when we had a superintendent at Alton Central School who was wreaking havoc on the employees there. As parents became more and more aware of that situation, we had a big turnover on the school board, and that is when several of the current board members, Pam and Carol, I believe, joined the board. We lost 2 New Hampshire Teachers of the Year from ACS at that time, and many other valuable seasoned educators. Now here I am again, just 8 years later, and I am sorry to say that a similar scenario is playing out at our schools. I took the time to read the roles and responsibilities for New Hampshire school boards. On page 1, it states that the only employee over whom the board has supervision is the superintendent, and that the role of a school board is not to run the schools, but to see that they are run well. When you have massive numbers of highly educated professionals scrambling to get out of this school, it is an indicator that something is not being run well, and you had better start looking for the problem. When you read this document, it clearly states that the path of communication between the board and the employees of the school goes through the superintendent. That being the case, it is understandable why you don't have the full picture. It is difficult for employee complaints to reach your ears when the narrative is being controlled by the one who the complaints are against. So I am here to bring this forward because it seems like you are not getting the full story. The number of employees who left, just off the top of my head, I did a count, was 20. I was one of them. 20 employees who left Prospect, at least 8 of whom functioned at the administrative level. That number of departures goes way beyond a strange convergence of personal reasons causing people to move on, and way beyond loyalty to a certain principle. People don't completely upend their lives, their salaries, their commute, their employment, because a friend moves on. And why did a proven and invested, competent principal suddenly move on? This is a leadership problem at the highest level, and if you don't address it, you will continue to have turnover and upheaval, which makes it difficult for our schools to run well. 20 people left, and that's just from Prospect. I don't know the numbers at the other schools, but I hope you do. 20 people. And I know for a fact that many more were looking to get out. It is your responsibility, members of the school board, to find out why. Mr. Henry, you as the chairperson have the authority to appoint 2 or more members of the board to a committee to interview the employees who fled. And if Mr. Henry doesn't initiate an inquiry, members of the board, you should insist on it. Find out how these long-term employees were treated. Do the work so that our staff and students don't continue to suffer. I've created a list of former colleagues who are no longer here for your reference. At the least you could do would be to set up some conference calls between a few of you and each of the individual administrators so you could hear for yourselves what the working dynamics were like under this administration. You may wonder, if things were so bad, why aren't the teachers complaining? That's a great question. People in this building are afraid to speak up against their boss for fear of retribution, and it is a reasonable fear. Last year, we had a veteran English teacher with a stellar educational record and reputation, and this teacher was non-renewed at the end of the year. There was no legitimate cause for a non-renewal instead of reduction in workforce, and that mark on the record of this educator will follow that person for the rest of their career. It is interesting to note that earlier in the school year, this teacher had to look for help from New Hampshire state union reps instead of the local union, and the teacher's spouse had written an editorial to the Baysider criticizing the administration. Interesting. This non-renewal seems pretty unsavory when those details come to light, and you as a board were misled to approve that departure as non-renewal, implying that the educator was not up to contract standards or did not fulfill their responsibilities, and that was simply not the case. So why don't you hear from current staff? Because the fear of retribution is real. And why doesn't our local union speak up? Another great question. Unfortunately, it seems that union leadership within our district is being placated with favoritism. And this is difficult for me to say because I like a lot of these individuals personally. And I'm not saying that these individuals are doing anything wrong. They just seem to be on the receiving end of what gives the appearance of partiality. Wrestling mats to ACS, tennis walls at Prospect, extra funding for robotics field trip, revisions to retirement packages, summer assignments with stipends going primarily to union leaders. Check for yourselves. At some point, you have to realize that all of this is not coincidence. At some point, the accumulation of concerns moves beyond plausible deniability, and it becomes a pattern of dysfunction. This school is being run with fear and favoritism. And members of the school board, you have a responsibility on behalf of the current staff to recognize it, investigate it, and put a stop to it. Let's see to it that our school is run well. I have other concerns about open enrollment, alternative credits in the community, undermining teacher jobs, and funding that seems to be flying to the TL Storer camp. But I am only here tonight to address the staffing issues because that in itself should be a big red flag. You can't simply ignore it and move on. You don't have to renew the contract of the current leadership when it expires, and the reality is you shouldn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public input?
Jason English. Well, actually, I was stopping here to see if you guys would be interested in support in football. Right now, ACS has joined the co-op that is Milton and Farmington and Alton for 2 through 8th grade. But we didn't do it for the high school level. I don't know if you guys have talked about that in the past or anything. I'm gonna get with Tim to get the athletic director and see if we can kind of get that going, but I'd like to at least, bring that, guys, to your attention. I think football, it's doing wonders for my boys, and I'm sure it could do wonders for everyone else, but I can't help but to hear some of this stuff and comment too, since we're talking about opinion. Open enrollment is vital for this school. We need to grow attendance in this school, or it's going to continue to have lost jobs. If we're driving kids out with our policies, which I'm sorry, but some of our policies have been, I'm not in favor of them. I'm not in favor of girls sharing boys' bathrooms and so on. Those are safe spaces. Those are laws that we're supposed to be, enforcing in our schools, and for whatever reason, we're going to play politics with that. It's not hate speech to keep genders separated, but with the masking, that little troll is at it again, and we're talking about masking up and all this other crap. And please do your research. Don't put all your masks on at the same time when I'm saying check out the Cochrane studies. Like, it's proven. They've done COVID, they've done all the other viruses again. They, hundreds of thousands of subjects. A N95 is useless. A cloth mask is useless. The little blue one that says on the back of the box that it doesn't protect against viruses, it still doesn't protect against viruses. So please don't do that to our children again. And one other thing I'd like to criticize, if I could, is the block scheduling. All right, it killed my oldest child from coming to school. I was not able to make sure that he was on that bus at 8 o'clock because I had to go to work. And I see a lot of parents talking about, the struggles of that block schedule. And, the struggles are real, man. Like, we got to make sure that, you're giving those parents the opportunity to make sure that that bus is there and we're not wasting gas on and pay for somebody making another trip around 2 different towns. So, opinions, it's great. Big thing, like football. Football's good for the youth, right? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public input? Seeing none, close public input, thank you. Back to agenda review. Add those 2 things. Was there anything else to add to the agenda review or subtract or take a motion?
I approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Perfect. Next is approval of August 8th, 2023 meeting minutes. Take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 8th, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Subtractions? Deletions? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Abstain.
1 abstention. All right. Finance reports, which was sent out to us as in our packet. Does anybody have questions on revenues or expenditures or anything Heidi would like to let us know?
Still in the beginning phase. I was able to encumber some of the salaries and health insurance. Please note, though, that I haven't dispersed any of the raises or warrant articles to this point, so it's still not real accurate. That hopefully I'll be able to bring to you guys next meeting. And we had a full board of auditors last week, and they're coming back Thursday to finish the on-site part of all 3 districts. So I've been busy.
Any questions for Heidi? All right. Next in our packet, we have buildings and ground reports. Anybody have questions or concerns?
Did they decide when they're doing a meeting? Did buildings and
We haven't scheduled a building and grounds meeting yet. I have the capital plan update in the packet tonight, and we'll have to schedule a meeting still.
All right. No questions there. Moving on to principals report. And it's our packet. Would you turn it over to you?
Thank you. You guys moved right along and I didn't have it pulled out.
You just take mine. It's right here.
Okay, thank you.
I can look over here.
Oh, thank you. So we have been engaging in many of the beginning of the school year activities. We started with a freshman orientation night on August 26th that was really well attended. Some of our open enrollment students came as well, and we were, covering policies at Prospect Mountain High School that related to discipline, but we also really talked a lot about the opportunities at the high school and what students could do and our excitement over pathways and expanding those opportunities, being flexible with students in their scheduling as they get older, and opening different ways for them to do internships and also get early college credit. So we wanted to make sure that early on freshman parents started to hear about all of the opportunities. We also encouraged them to get involved in clubs and athletics, and overall it was a really great night. And then we held our opening days. The first day was our new teachers and our new staff members, so we welcomed them in. Matt Jazokis led us out in a morning activity. Dr. Broderick attended as well, and he spoke to them, all of our new members, and then we met with them in the afternoon and went over some basic information that they needed to start off their career at Prospect Mountain High School. So overall it was a good day, but we also tried not to overwhelm people, because when you take on a new job, it's just an overwhelming amount of information. So we wanted to make sure that the things that we were sharing with them were pertinent and important for them to get moving forward. Matt has a wonderful mentor program that he's brought to us, and so we are hoping that through that program we'll continue to support our new staff members throughout the school year. So you can see our list of new faculty and staff. I'm really excited about the people that have joined us, a lot of wonderful seasoned professionals, as well as I'm really excited that we have Greg Judd in our music department. He's working in Alton and Barnstead as well. He's going to bring some new energy to our teaching staff, but we have many other new people here, and our school counseling department has hit the ground running. They've been really working hard on getting schedules ironed out. We did have an English teacher that we found, a man named Bill Coleman, that we, at the main office, or the SAU, will be extending an offer to. He's going to be joining us from Wichita, Kansas, and we are incredibly excited to have him. He's a published author, a poet, has an incredible career in a private school, and then he had his own online school for 3 years during COVID, so that he was really believed in delivering top quality instruction to the students in a creative, engaging way, and his references were absolutely wonderful. So we'll be welcoming him sometime in October. He's got to get packed out, and he and his wife are going to be moving out here. And he's going to be returning to New England. He did a fellowship at Harvard and worked for a literary magazine on the Cape. And so he and his wife have always had it in their hearts to get back to New England. And then we all gathered on the 29th for our high school kickoff. And we spent the day in presentations in the morning. Teachers had lunch, and then they were given a lot of time to work in their classrooms, to collaborate with their colleagues, and to get ready for the school year. The class of 2027 on Thursday morning, then we had the opening day district-wide, which was really exciting to be able to see teachers and administrators from Barnstead and Alton, all of us together under one system. The class of 2027 was welcomed in on Thursday morning with student council members and seniors and juniors who had volunteered to help. And so they all welcomed the freshmen, and that was pretty exciting and fun to welcome them in. And we had a fantastic day with them. The highlight of the day for me was seeing them out on the field. They were laughing, they were talking, they were doing whatever crazy things that Russ Trundle especially deserves a shout out for organizing that day. And they broke the tug-of-war rope. So seniors, watch out, these freshmen are strong.
That's funny.
So they made pyramids, they just had a great time, and we ended the day with ice cream. So we really had a fun start. They walked through their schedule, they got a tour of the building, lots of great stuff. That day I opened my mail and was excited to find out that Troy Corvo was named the New Hampshire Art Educator of the Year. So this is an incredible award for Troy, an incredible honor, well deserved, and he kept it under his hat since August 4th.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. So really happy to celebrate him. So thank you for approving the seniors to paint their parking lot space. It has gone so well. And I just want to tell you that Colby Davis of Sea Lines Paving Painting, he painted the double yellow line for us and spruced up the painting around the front of the building. He was out painting the numbers for us for our fire drills, and he agreed to donate his time to paint the squares so that we had everything looking really nice and orderly. So when the seniors came, they knew exactly where they could paint, but it's all lined up beautifully in the parking lot. And if you have a chance to go check out the students' artwork, it's pretty fantastic and fun to see what they came up with, and I included some pictures for you. So thank you for, having faith in us that we could do this and do it well. And I'm really happy. They always made sure that a parent or an advisor or a staff member was present as they did it. So they showed a lot of respect for the property. And today was opening day with everyone, so that was a really great day as well, and really exciting to see all the hallways full of students. So lots of fun conversations with young people today.
And I got the parking spots look good. I went yesterday and looked at all of them, so.
Awesome.
All right. Anybody have any questions for principal? Anything? All right. So moving on to athletic director, John Larson.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Larson.
It's nice to meet everyone.
Let's talk about SALT, Mr. Larson.
The student athlete leadership team, I'm proposing that we begin or start a student athlete leadership team here at Prospect Mountain. I've given you some correspondence in the packet tonight. Basically, what a SALT is it's a combination of student council and what's the other organization? I keep forgetting.
National Honor
National
Society.
Honor Society, thank you. It's grade-based. You need a grade to get into it, a 2.75 or higher. Generally, we hand out honor cords when they graduate, if they graduate with a 3.25 or higher. It's something that we look to our young athletes to form leadership or be in leadership roles through the NHIA and Life of an Athlete. There is a conference that they go to each spring. Last time we had it was prior to COVID, but it was at the Mount Washington Resort. They stay overnight. They speak with some of the people that were there at the last conference were Navy SEALs, college coaches, college athletes. They talk to them about leadership roles and whatnot. What I'd really like to see, if this is approved, is our athletes work with fellow athletes in leadership roles. We often give kids a captaincy on their jersey, but not necessarily inform them or teach them how to be good leaders. We expect them to know. And I've put together a program for SALT to actually present to the captains each season to tutor them in being a better leader. So we would do things in school, bring in guest speakers and things like that to promote leadership amongst the athletic teams here at Prospect Mountain.
It'll cost $1,200 a year, which we'll budget in the future and we'll find this year. And I think that's about it.
And that $1,200 would go to paying for the rooms at the conference for 3 or 4 of the leaders on that team.
So do you need a motion?
Or you go, yeah, motion and do questions.
Okay, I make a motion, we accept the program, the SALT program, as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
I think this looks really great. The more chances we have to build leadership, I think the better for our kids, and this is fantastic. Matt's stealing my microphone.
How many students would be on the committee?
Well, at my past school, we had 16 students, and we try to represent from each one of the sports fields, including our unified athletes. And some of the things that the kids did was actually run basketball games, collect the gates, or run the field. I'm now kind of like pat myself on the back, but we had kids with the mops on the floor, so if a kid fell, they'd clean stuff up. Kids escort the teams to the locker rooms and whatnot, and they kind of run the show. And I might say that the officials that ran the playoff games at my last high school were very impressed with the leadership roles that these kids had and gave compliment to that on their way out. So, 16 kids approximately.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Anything else you want to bring up before we ask
Field questions?
Yeah, no. Did you have anything else you want to relay to us, or?
I didn't know if you wanted me to give you the fill-in on the fields and whatnot, as far as that goes.
I
but-
had the question, so I was the one who asked Jason to put it on the agenda,
Sure.
athletic fields, because last time you gave us a very extensive checklist.
Yes.
And it looks like the practice fields are not up to par, that they sound like they have holes, they have problems when kids are practicing. And yet what I hear, because my grandson's on the varsity soccer, they're not allowed to practice at all on this field out here. So why is that? That's what I don't understand.
This has primarily been a game field. We're trying to keep it pristine condition for games. I have witnessed a field be overused, and at the end of your season, you want the best field possible for playoffs, and that can be a detriment in the long run. I feel that the important part is that we address the fields out back and in a timely fashion and get those up to par where they should be. Going back to this field again, we have beautiful facilities here at Prospect, absolutely beautiful. And I would just hate to see a field that is primarily a game field be used for anything else when it comes time to play the games that really, truly matter.
But is it hazardous for our kids to be out there practicing? Because I know they practice every night. They go from 5:30 to, I believe, 7 is what Isaac does.
I would say it was a concern, the fields are a concern based on the lack of turf that's on them. I don't think it's a safety. I think the bollards that are sticking out at the baseball field in play are a bigger concern than the actual athletic field that we play soccer on.
Well, the worst areas where the grass had been worn away are no longer in play on the practice fields. We had those repaired over the summer, and until turf takes in those areas, the nets have been moved in and those areas have been roped off.
So the field is smaller than
It's a
the
practice field.
regulation field? Yeah.
Does that hold the kids back from practicing on a
Well, as far as
non-regulation?
corner kicks, and some of this has to do with like logistics, like corner kicks, you have to be so far from the goal. There's two different size fields up there. To do all that stuff, you can go outside, for practice, you can go outside the boundaries of the field to do your corner kicks. There is enough room up there on the smaller of the two fields to do that. I don't think it impedes their practice, per se.
Could we do some sort of compromise where they have one practice the night before a game to use the front field?
That would be up to the powers that be, but I would stay off that field. That's my personal opinion. I would
Well,
stay
you
off
are
that
as
field.
good as you practice. So if we're practicing on fields that aren't two size, or we have to change the way we kick the ball in, maybe one practice before wouldn't be that bad.
My daughter's on a varsity soccer program. They haven't complained, so I don't, but I can talk to the coach, but they seem to have an issue with playing up there, practicing up there.
Do they practice before a game on this field, or they have to go back and do that? Like they get out of school at 3.
They practice on the practice fields. They play on the varsity.
So like
on-
today, for example, they
Yep.
had a 4:00 game. So they get out of school at 3. They have to go to the back fields to practice. They don't even get to practice.
No, they practice down here
There's no
before the game.
practice on game day.
They do.
They go- yeah,
Okay.
they go down
That's what
before
I'm
games.
asking.
Yeah, they go
Do they
down.
practice on game
Yeah.
day?
Well, I mean, I think if we're, right now, did we put sod down over the summer?
We did.
Where is it? It's not there.
On the practice field.
No, I know, but it's not there
It
now.
didn't-
So
didn't
he
take.
didn't, he
It
didn't
didn't take.
put enough water on it, but the vendor's responsible for growing grass, so he has to keep doing it until it works.
Okay. So that, they're gonna redo it when
He
that
has to.
cost to us.
Yeah, we don't pay him for not giving us grass.
Okay. Well, I saw it there and then I didn't see it there, so I didn't know what happened, where it went. But I mean, if we can't, and I'm just trying to think of a way we can give them a little bit, because we're taking a little bit from them. We aren't giving them a full soccer field, so if we give them at least one practice, maybe an hour, or maybe, you know, an hour, whatever their practice time is, to get them on the field so that they can have some home team advantage of some sort. Because they're also sharing the field back there with like 8 and 9-year-olds. There's not a lot of space. I mean, it's just.
Are the Revs practicing back there also? At the same time as the varsity teams? I didn't realize that.
At the same time as our teams?
They're not on the field with our teams. They're
We're
practicing
all on
off
different
the side.
teams. So sometimes the varsity's down in the back and they're not even up top.
So currently, right now, just to inform the board, the boys and girls program switch fields every other week because the two fields are two different sizes. To be fair and equitable, I thought that was the best decision to go forward with, okay? The smaller field has a better turf on it, and the one with less turf on it is larger. Just,
You got
So
4
it sounds like
teams. You
we
have
just
4
need to
teams out
address
there.
the fields and get the fields
practicing.
fixed. It sounds like that is a reoccurring issue at these meetings. So what do we need to do to get the fields correctly?
We've encumbered the money and hired the contractor to fix the fields. So at this point, it's as long as it takes them to grow grass on fields, which could be a year. I mean, that's
Yeah, it's
the
not
nature of
gonna
growing
This year,
grass.
nothing is growing, unfortunately, so, with all the rain we've had, so. Sounds like it's just the way it is.
Just for the record, it wasn't the kids that were complaining, it was the adults. The parents were complaining, just to make sure, because my grandson would kill me if he heard me say that. I'm just letting you all know, he would kill me. So, parents are complaining, that's all. And I sit at the game, so I hear it.
I ref up there. I know, I hear it. But
Yeah.
I do hear it when parents are, because I ref up there, but I just tell them we're trying to fix it, so.
Yeah, and I was just thinking while we try to fix it, if we could do something so that they have a little bit of, like they feel like we're helping them instead of just saying no.
I will say that I be a former athletic director part-time. If you ruin this field in front of the goals with over practice, you can't, it will not be there for playoff season. There's no way to bring it back.
6 practices over practice.
it happens, it does, it's not as bad as football, but it does happen very quickly, very, very quickly.
Yeah, you're talking boys, girls, you're talking varsity, 2 varsity teams, 2 JV teams. You got 4 teams that want practice on there. And one coach would like to have, 4 practices a week on that field.
So it's a no.
Somebody could put a motion, if that's what you want to do, but.
I mean, I would put a motion in to allow them to practice at least once before a home game.
Are you talking just the varsity teams, or?
Just the varsity teams.
Well, then you run into why you're letting varsity and nobody else.
I'm just asking, that's all. I'm asking
Right. No,
how
I'm
we're
just trying to,
narrowing
like-
it down.
Well, they'll
They
do
all
it.
usually
sides of
practice
it.
together, I think, don't they?
I think they have, when I've seen them, they've been all out there together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they practice together.
Sometimes, depends on the game. Sometimes they separate before the game. So it just depends, and each team's different. Boys, girls.
So what's been past practice? The
We-
kids not,
We only have one coach for both the JV and varsity girls soccer teams.
oh, okay.
So at that time, all the girls will be on that field for the practice. I'm just giving you all the information.
I had a varsity player for 4 years, and I feel like they did practice quite a bit out there as well. I remember picking him up a lot out there. And I might be wrong, I just don't remember complaints about it, but I understand wanting to keep the field nice for the games.
I do understand that piece. I'm not
Yeah.
denying that. I
Well,
hear what
when-
you're saying.
Baseball has to practice at ACS because they can't practice on their field. The ACS team doesn't get to practice on their own field. There's that issue too. So, I mean, I don't,
I believe that issue has been addressed though with drainage, with the drainage that was installed. The only reason why I know that, I coached against Prospect Mountain and we did play it at the middle school, that game. But
Yeah.
I believe that there's been drainage installed on both the softball and the baseball field,
for the spring.
a lot, yes.
Yeah, it was a lot. Period.
I'm in a quandary. I'm just bringing what the parents were talking about, being concerned. And I am concerned for safety, but you're saying that's not a safety issue.
Well, I'm not
Because
saying
you-
it's not a safety issue. I'm just saying that we have a choice. I mean, it's obviously not my choice to make, but prior to this meeting, my thought was, here we have 2 soccer fields out back that have been used. Those are our practice fields. We have practice fields to practice on. Why tear up in front of the goals? Why tear up the PK spot, the corners, and rough up this beautiful field when it's the first thing you see when you really come into the school? And, in 16 games, we're going to be playing playoff games on that, maybe even 2 playoff games if we're buying.
You also have competitive teams that play up out back. Actually, that's where they play on that large field out back, who have not had any issues, and there's some other games coming up with the competitive, so.
And
Is it the best field in the world? No. But it's good.
So when you put unsatisfactory, you weren't talking about, I was looking at this checklist, that's why I'm asking. I was concerned for safety of the kids. I know how hard they work at their soccer. They're running hard, they're sliding all over, we all know, because we have kids who play soccer. So I just don't want any safety hazards that the kids are gonna get hurt.
So 85% grass, 85% turf is your standard. So there should be 85% of the field be covered by turf, right? That, you're not there with 85. That's it's.
And obviously, we're trying to fix that, I get that.
Correct,
Right.
correct. That is what I meant with that check mark in the column where it's like needs improvement.
Okay, I just don't want a kid to get hurt, that's all.
Well, if we can't practice on the big field, can we get 2 inches for soccer fields? And we're at 5 inches of grass because they only mow once a week? Could we maybe offer them some grass cutting?
I'll
And
talk.
maybe they would make it
We could definitely talk to
a
the.
nicer field to play on. I think that was one of the complaints I heard too.
We could definitely talk to the gentleman who mows.
Is that a budget item?
It may be.
For grass, I don't know. Is that a budget item?
No, we can cut the grass to any length you want it. If that's a decision the board wants to make, you just tell us what length to cut the grass, and we will cut the grass to that length.
I have no idea.
I think we need to know what the standard is, right?
I'm not an athlete, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
I mean,
I just sit and watch.
at this point, I would say the fields they're practicing, they're going pretty well. We just need to get grass on the field. We have money for it. We're trying to do it. So when we get there, we can get there. Barnstead's the same way. Some of their fields out back on the field that does not grow grass. It's just dirt. Happens. We have better fields than most. But there was a motion. Did anybody want a second motion?
Could you repeat the motion? What was the motion again? To do one?
To allow the kids, the varsity teams, to practice the night before their game on their home field.
I'll second.
Oh, for discussion?
It's a tough decision because we hired an expert to tell us what to do, and so now I'm like in a quandary, but I am hearing complaints, that's all. And again, it's not the kids complaining, it was the parents, so.
Do we have any feedback from the coaches with concerns of not practicing on this field? Do the coaches feel like they're at a disadvantage?
There's always concerns from coaches with everything, as you can imagine, and the field is no different. The ideal surface would be throwing turf down, but we don't have $1.8 million in our back pockets. So yes, they have raised. One coach has not, the other coach has. I'll remind the board that we are 2-1 in soccer with the boys and 2-0 and 2 wins and no losses with the girls. We're using the practice fields that we currently have. So it's not affecting their play per se on the field.
Any discussion?
What if they just limited it to a half an hour before practice was over? So it wouldn't be a whole hour and a half of doing the turf, just to get a sense of the field. I don't know. Do they have a sense of the field? They've been in, a lot of them have been on the team for quite a while. So I don't know. I'm in a quandary now.
We got a motion and a second, so we can go and take the vote, see how that goes.
Okay.
Do a roll call vote though, so this might be split. Randy?
To preserve the field, I would say no.
No.
I'm gonna say no.
I guess I'll say no also.
No.
I have to go, yes.
No.
Motion fails.
Sorry.
Anything else from athletics? Anybody have any other questions for your athletic director?
So the vacant positions, did we just not get any applicants?
Which vacant?
Like it says we have 3 vacancies.
Yes, we have not. We did score a couple big hits with the ones we had open, but there are 3 vacancies that still are open. Basically, due to either no applicants or somebody who's not quite qualified.
Because it says posted as of 9/1, but they were posted before. We
Correct.
just need to repost.
Yeah, we bump the postings from time to time to,
Yeah.
and email staff in all 3 schools now when we have a coaching vacancy at any school.
I wonder if we should put that on social media and spread it around a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also in our packet, we have the technology report. Or did I miss somebody? Hold on, make sure. Technology report, yep.
There's
There's no technology? All right, I missed on my packet. Is there anything to add for technology, anything?
School's open.
Technology,
They
okay?
have, they have hundreds of tickets.
Awesome.
It's exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Then we'll go over to curriculum.
Good evening. In my report, I have several areas I just want to quickly highlight. On Wednesday, August 30th, we had our system kickoff here at Prospect Mountain High School. As some of you are educators, you know that marks an exhilarating journey as we embark on this opportunity of creating this positive school culture. Throughout the presentation in the morning, we focused in on be kind, be honest, and be curious, phrases that we'll be using throughout the school year. We had a couple of short videos to show as a way of really kind of cultivating that idea of this positive culture. One was the Butterfly Circus. If you've never seen it, it's about a 20-minute short film. Do yourself a favor and take a look at that. There are many, many different storylines, if you will, and different things you can learn based off of that. And certainly one of the things that we challenged them to was be a Mr. Jensen. Another short video. Mr. Jensen was a teacher, a young man who had a little bit of what we would call ADHD today. Rather than pushing him to the sideline, he recognized that this young man was born to be a drummer. And now the guy's a motivational speaker, and he drums all around the country and in schools and everything else. So we challenged them to be a Mr. Jensen. In your packet, you do have the slideshow from that day. So overall, feedback has been positive. People left with a lot of energy, a lot of positivity as a result of that day. PE, ELO, you'll hear a little bit more about this. Their action items. We've been working with the Alton Dance Academy to establish a physical education ELO beginning this year with your approval. The school counseling department has been working with the ADA to look at the ELO process in terms of what will be accomplished throughout those courses, what the credit would look like, how kids would be evaluated, things of that nature. Again, this is our hope of beginning in developing a template so that we can then utilize that same type of template for other areas who wish to seek ELO or internships. Matt and I have met regarding STAR testing here at Prospect Mountain High School. Again, this year will be K through 12, so we'll have a continuous assessment that is consistent in the system. All students in grades 9 and 10 will be tested. We're looking at the week of the 18th. We might be able to bump that to the 11th if we get things up and running. Matt was pretty confident we can do that, but we use the 18th just in case. And that'll be in math and ELA, and that will take place in those classes. Again, for those of you, quick update, the nice part about the STAR assessment is that they're about 30 minutes for each, so within their regular class periods, we can accomplish that, and then we get the results rather quickly. So then we'll be able to take that information, Principal Davis and I will review it, and then we will provide that to the faculty and the departments for their discussion. Again, this year, data dashboard at the end of each term. I will be presenting the PMHS data dashboard. Again, we'll be looking at state testing results, looking at co-curricular participation, graduation rates. We'll be assessing the core values as we did last year. We'll do that on a more consistent basis so that we'll have some trends over time. And then obviously student and teacher attendance rate. Again, these are the areas that speak closely to the vision and the core values here at Prospect Mountain High School.
So the testing is K through 10, right? You said
yes, I'm sorry, K through 10.
12?
Yes, sorry,
okay, I want to make sure.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Move on to superintendent's report.
So my report is in this clip with pink divider sheets between the pages, separate from the rest of your packet. So last month, first we talked about students being excluded from academic programs and what that might mean in relation to current school discipline law. We had a robust discussion on opening day with the staff here at the high school with Ms. Davis, and everybody understands, I think, that we are looking to have a more formal process that extends to the SAU and the board before we exclude students from any of our programs for more than 10 days in the case of what a principal can do, or more than 20 days in the case of what a superintendent can do. Anytime we think it's appropriate to exclude any student for longer than 20 days, that is a decision you must make under the law. It is not a decision that can be made at the school level or at my level. So we described all of this. We talked about the law and the regulation involved here with all staff. They had some questions. We had a good discussion, and we are ready to go. The first handout I have behind my report packet is titled Step Process Classroom Discipline Procedures for Removal from Class, and you will see that the revisions are under the third and fourth steps, and they refer to exactly what I just said. First, there are more opportunities for a behavior plan and the principal to intervene, but then in the fourth step, the student gets sent to me, and I hold a hearing or a meeting with the student and a parent or guardian, which is required by discipline law prior to any exclusion for more than 10 days from any of our academic programs. That this page appears, or this information appears in the student handbook. So you approved the student handbook at your last meeting, and we had a conversation about this. The red language is what will appear in the handbook, unless, of course, you want to talk about it. I trust you'll interrupt if you want to talk about it. Facility use, rental procedures. This has been a topic for a solid year, maybe longer. And in this packet, behind the second pink sheet, you will find a smaller packet titled Policy KF, Prospect Mountain High School Community Use of School Facilities Policy. In your action items tonight, I've proposed revisions to this policy and to the associated procedure. I'm going to focus on the changes in the procedure because I think the policy changes are pretty insignificant. In the procedure, I've proposed that instead of event requests being made 30 days prior to the date of the event, we should be able to handle requests that are made 14 days prior to the events, and then it gets a little bit deeper, you'll find more red. I'm on page 4. Under Category 1, Category 2, and Category 3, I've changed the phrasing but not the meaning. Category 1 users are not from Alton or Barnstead. So a company that wants to use our facility, it could be a youth sports organization, but not located with its mailing address or its headquarters in Alton or Barnstead. That's a Category 1 user. Those are the only users who pay 100% of the rental rates on the rate sheet in this procedure. Everybody else pays less or nothing. Category 2 is an individual, group, organization, or business that is located in Alton or Barnstead, but is not one of our schools or part of one of our town governments. So a nonprofit organization like the Rotary Club, which uses our facility annually, some others without a vote by the school board to extend facilities use for free. Category 2 users pay 50% of the listed rates. Those are on page 6, and we'll get there in just a minute. And then Category 3 is any one of our 3 schools that serve Alton or Barnstead and our municipal government. So this includes rec department programs. I think that's probably the most important thing to understand. There is no rental fee. They're completely waived for Category 3 users. There are some things that anybody has to pay for, and that is off-hour custodial services, kitchen staff, and some other services that I'll get to on the last page. So that's the meaning of the revisions in Categories 1, 2, and 3.
So I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So if you have a group in Category 1 without an Alton or Barnstead address, but all of the kids involved are from Alton and Barnstead, how do we deal with that? So, for example, I think the Revs have their address outside of...
They're considered reps, so they run the Parks and Rec program.
Well, it depends. I think when we meet with the operation manager for the Revolution, we're going to learn that some of their programs are rec programs,
Okay.
and some of their programs are private for-profit programs. And we're going to have to be able to
So we
tease
have
out
to
which are
distinguish
which.
that. Okay.
But I also think that they might have an address in Barnstead, but we can,
Do they?
we'll
I
cross
thought it
that
was-
bridge when we meet with them.
I thought it was...
Just as if, honestly, the same standard we would hold any other user group to, unless you direct us to do differently. The rates were a little bit low. The rate for using a field or the track was $100 a day. Field use is about impact. It's not about whether or not it's being used, or, it feels free running around in the sunshine on grass. But it isn't. We were just talking about fields that don't have 85% turf coverage that we're trying to repair, and it's a result of use. With more impact, there are things we can do to bring fields back, but they cost money. So we can aerate, we can punch plugs and overseed and fertilize, but none of those things are free. And this is why schools and municipalities charge use fees for these kinds of facilities. So the proposed fees, honestly, they're still low compared to many other schools, but I tried to hit a point that I thought you would tolerate. That's higher than the old ones, but still below market. And please understand that the majority of our users are Category 2 and Category 3 users. So they're paying 50% or nothing of these rates. For almost every use that requires staff to be here outside of regular hours, there's a 2-hour minimum, simply because we have to get an employee in here. And those charges are listed below. $30 an hour for custodial employees. This is a simpler way than in the past. The business office would have to find out which custodian was here, and then what that person's actual hourly rate was, and then whether or not it was overtime. And it's an awful lot of work. So these are good round numbers that cover our costs and probably make sense. For custodial coverage, use of tables and chairs is fine if they're the ones we already own. There's a cost here for food service employees. The most common food service request is coffee and tea service, so there's just a rate formula for that, which can come without staffing, at least without staffing who stay during the event. If you're running an event for 3 hours, but you just want coffee and tea set up at the beginning, we can set it up and our person can leave. Or if you want that person to stay, we then charge the hourly labor charge. We don't charge for somebody to come in or we don't need to charge for somebody to come in and connect to our overhead projectors, as long as they can come in at least the day before during business hours and test their setup and make sure it works. We do have a system for audio and visual services that already exists. We have not offered the services of an athletic trainer, but I've talked with Mr. Larson and we think we can, at least subject to availability, and there's a reasonable rate there for people who need that. I first became aware that we had this issue on a Monday, I don't know, a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, when I got 3 telephone complaints in my office that day about an event that had been held here on the campus over that weekend, and there were no events on our campus calendar for that weekend. That's how I found out we had an issue. And the complaints were all about toilets. The complaints were that there were too many people on the campus for the porta potties that you keep on our campus that had been overwhelmed by this big group that had come to use the facility. So if more than 100 people are expected for an event that lasts more than 4 hours, there's an additional daily charge here to add more porta potties and to either empty or clean the ones we have. Field striping needs to be done either by our staff or with our knowledge. We can't roll in the morning and find out that somebody has painted lines on the fields. So there is a charge for us to do it, or an invitation for user groups to work with the principal or with my office to get permission to do it themselves at a time and in a manner that we're aware of. And if it seems like I wouldn't be saying that if it hadn't happened, you're correct. It has happened. And that's why it's specified here. Only our staff can groom the fields, turn the infields, water the grass, mow the grass. That's about liability. That's all. We contract and have our own employees for those things. We're insured, our contractor's insured. We can't have somebody show up and roll a zero-turn mower out of the back of their truck and ride onto our fields with it. So that's an overview of the changes I'm proposing to both the policy and the procedure and to the rates contained in the procedure. We've met with the facilities director, the athletic director, Mr. Jazokis, Ms. Davis, and we've talked about the system that the high school uses to actually take reservations all the way through. Sorry, Heidi. Heidi was there too. I didn't mention her the first time. All the way through to invoicing, and admittedly that's going to continue to be a work in progress as we try some new things. But I'm very confident that everyone understands that the system in the past was not effective. It has to be effective. There are clear rules here written down with your approval, and then the next thing that happens is Matt and I start meeting with representatives of various user groups to talk about what their experiences have been like in the past, what they need from us going forward, and then we'll go over all of this with them. And with the Revolution, for example, we'll talk to Mr. Terrian about what are rec events, what are private events, what categories do they fall into, and we'll make those decisions working with them.
So is it only the Alton Rec? Don't you have a rec?
We have both. We have some Barnstead rec programs and some Alton rec programs that use the facility here.
For Alton's Park and Rec? Do you have your own Park and Rec?
They do both.
Oh,
They
you have
do
your own?
ours, and they do Pittsfield.
I didn't realize that. I thought you had your own. So, for example, Lauren, when we had that soccer jamboree, was that through the Parks and Rec? Or was that?
We don't have a soccer Parks and Rec anymore.
So that's what the
That's through the
jamboree was
Reds.
for? Okay, that's what I'm asking. So you know, I'd hate to see those events not happen because they're being charged a lot, so
But
I
they
just.
wouldn't be for rec.
Okay,
It would just
But
be.
they
Just
run,
be
but
for-
they run some competitive ones that,
okay.
that the three
So the
the
team that-
3v3 tournament would be a chargeable one, because that is actual true tournament that you're raising money for.
Okay,
Not a
The team that
recreation
Cameron's
jamboree.
on right now practicing is a competitive team.
okay,
So the competitive people that come up with those competitive teams appear as well, they'd be paying
okay.
for those
I'm
competitive
just
ones.
trying to sort it through.
If it helps, since none of you have does anyone have an ice hockey player? So let's make this non-personal. When you register your child to play hockey this winter, you're going to pay tuition for that program. And part of that tuition is going to pay for ice time. There is not a minute on the ice that hockey association where your child plays hockey is not paying for that surface. For the very same reason, owners of facilities like this charge for use of athletic fields, because they do get worn out and they do require maintenance, and that all costs money.
Are the Revs saying they're not gonna pay?
No,
Nobody said
Oh,
that.
they are gonna.
Yeah, I've spoken with them many times. Like,
Yeah.
I'm usually the bridge for them. Yeah, they're actually just looking for a fee schedule, what it's going to be, so
So
they can
they're
budget.
just kind of waiting on us to come up with the number that they can agree to.
So they can put in their budget. That's all. And they've
Right.
tried in the past. There has been some breakdown of communications of different people that have been here, and Revs have tried. And I've worked with the superintendent more than he wants me to try to get this
Having
going
fun.
back and forth. Yeah, they're on board, paying what they have to.
Right, so right now,
Won't
they're
be an
not
issue.
doing anything wrong. They're being allowed to play here because they asked and we said yes.
Okay,
Is this comment, like, what does that mean? I don't know.
Well, the board didn't.
Who said yes?
Someone who worked here previously. Nobody has been able to tell me. At some point, somebody who wasn't the board made a deal that if the Revolution organization bought soccer nets and balls every year, that they could use the fields for free as much as they wanted.
Okay.
It's not in writing. It's what I learned after the day that I got complaints about the overwhelmed porta potties and asked, what event did we have at the school? And learned it was a Revolution event, and then started asking more questions. And that was a year and a half ago, and here we are.
I tell you, the people that were here doing something are no longer here. So the communication is much better, and then setting this together, the Revs are on board with this
Okay.
as well. And they're going to have meetings with them, and this should not be an issue.
Okay. And for basketball too?
Yes, with the basketball and everything.
Did the Revs get a bill though? I heard they got like some $800 bill for using the camp.
They don't owe anything for anything this
Okay.
year until you approve these policies and procedures. We haven't had a conversation with Mr. Terrian, and they're not being charged anything.
Okay.
When we do, and the Revolution or any other organization tells me we're doing this on behalf of your local rec department, I'm going to contact the local rec department and ask for a letter from them
sure.
confirming this is a free rec program for our kids, and therefore, running under the auspices of our public rec department, and then they'll get free access to our facilities.
And they'll just pay for their competitive games.
Yep.
Okay, sounds
I mean, I
like
think that's
clarify.
fair. I don't disagree with that.
Well, I think that's why it's important we have this transparency, right? We want to support the kids, and a lot of us don't know, what came before us. So I think this is important that we have it in writing. It'll be the same for everybody. Depending on what group they are, there may or may not be a cost, depending on how big the event is, or if it's inside or outside. I think we needed this years ago.
But this also puts more pressure on making sure our fields are not at risk for our children. If we're going to be charging companies to use our fields, we have to put the money into
They have to
making them
provide the
safe.
insurance. Right? They're the
Yeah,
liability insurance.
every user has to provide proof of their own insurance.
Which,
Right.
like to your point earlier, Lauren, right? We saw where they had laid sod and it didn't take, and my first concern was, we're paying for that again. Now
You won't pay for that
we're
again.
not paying for that again. So hopefully having someone on buildings, I'm impressed with Mr. Alistair so far, and an AD who's going to be walking and showing up and hopefully paying attention, not letting those issues that have been known for a while continue to slide, I think is really important.
Let me just put this here. I've been dealing with this for the past as long as you have, because I'm the one that the refs text, call, and everything else most of the time. And been trying to deal with this. And I dealt with the previous administration to try to get this fixed. More than once. The ones that are no longer here. And the new AD this year has helped out tremendously with the superintendent and with Matt of getting this stuff put together. It's been a frustration of mine for a while. And the board has talked about this over and over again.
Right, but now it's concrete.
And it was put in different people's hands to take care of this, and it wasn't. And I was part of those conversations. So now it's actually being rectified.
Do we
You
need
vote on
to
this?
approve it now, or?
It's under your action items. You can do whatever you want.
Oh, it's in records. Okay,
I
wait
just
for
have one comment, which is, I don't know what the right pricing is for programs, but this, I believe you that it's low, you know. I just want to emphasize, this school was built for the community, and I think over time it's gotten away from that model of being open to the community. This is supposed to be the centerpiece of both of our towns, and I want to make sure that all the fees are accessible enough for everybody. Some of us didn't play hockey because we didn't want to shell out the money and do all the driving, right? But because we're in a smaller community, we don't have as many options for our kids without driving 45 minutes each way. And I know many parents feel that. If we were in a Concord or something like that, we would have all kinds of programs available. So I just want to make sure we're as welcoming as we can be.
I agree. No.
So, I sit on the board for the rec baseball and softball, and like, we have our own fields and we maintain it. Yes. But there's a cost to maintaining those fields. So the kids that pay or that play baseball and softball, t-ball, pay, even though it's a rec program, but they do for soccer as well. And so having to pay for the field, whether in this manner, which they're not even going to have to for the rec, like, that's somewhat unheard of. I mean, like, our fees, most of them go to deal with the field and maintain the field, so, as well as the insurance and things like that. And at least in Barnstead, the rec kids are being asked to, like, fundraise on top of the fee that they paid. So I feel like the rec programs they're fine and this structure works. And for the competitive teams, they are charging a tuition. So
Yeah, sure.
why shouldn't they pay for that?
Yeah.
Like, this seems like a bargain price.
Yeah.
I guess Cam's on one.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's complaining about the price.
No.
I just don't want to close off opportunities, that's what Pam's saying too. That's all. And it sounds like it's
But
under
it's
control.
not, because there wouldn't be a cost.
Right, which is great.
And not just for sports, but, you know, dance and other things.
Everybody,
you know. Yeah. I think I just heard over time that the high school is maybe not very friendly to outside organizations, and that's, you know, I want it to be really accessible.
The most common complaint I have fielded in my office regarding the high school over the last 4 years has had nothing to do with curriculum or even COVID, but has had to do with facilities use. It is the most common thing that somebody from the community has reached out to me about because they haven't been able to get the response they were looking for from the school. No pressure, Chaley.
Also, if you're looking at facilities use software, I don't know if you have something, I would say just be creative and look outside what every other school district in New Hampshire uses, because they're all terrible. But there are some good ones out there that are used in other states.
Nice to know, Pam, thanks.
Just super unfriendly to use, yeah, to parents.
Awesome.
All right. So I'll move we approve the,
You want to do it now or under action items? Because it's under action items. Whatever.
do it now, we're discussing.
That's fine. Do it.
Community use, policy KF.
Second?
And KF.
Motion seconded. Any other comments, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? All right, passes.
Next in my report, behind the next pink sheet, you'll see this slides presentation printed 2 up. This is our ESSER use of funds report. It is required that every school district receiving ESSER grant funding have this posted on its website. You don't have to go looking for it because I printed it for you. It includes our current reopening plan. That's still required. We have to have our reopening plan posted. Ours says that there are no specific mitigation measures in effect in the school, and that it's my job to tell you if the Department of Health and Human Services issues any new guidance that would change that. The most important thing, however, is on the back, and you'll see some red type on the last slide. That's the money that has not been spent yet, but that was planned for use in these categories. And instead of facilities project next to $250,000, you'll see to be determined through additional stakeholder consultation 2023-24. That's why we're here. That is the money that we would have used on the air quality and flat roof replacement project that when we issued the RFP came in over $1 million. Maybe the second time it was only 900,000. So the 250,000 from ESSER would have been a nice start, but not nice enough. So we still have those grant funds through next September 30th, just over 1 year from now. So we have to decide what to do with that money. There are 7 categories for which ESSER funds can be expended. It's actually on the second page of this little report. Economic support to communities, health and safety, planning and professional development, where we've done some, staffing, support for remote operations and learning, facilities uses, and then programs designed to evaluate and address lost learning. We've done some of that so far as well. Stakeholder engagement is extremely important to the Department of Education when it comes to this use of funds. So what we will do next is send a survey to students, to staff, to parents, and to you, and yours will be separate so that we'll know it came from the board. And we need to get serious about what would the best uses of some of this money be for this institution, knowing that the clock is going to be ticking now for the next 13 months. Not because we didn't plan ahead, but because the plan we had just didn't work out once we got through procurement. So better to know now than next June, when it would probably just be too late. So tomorrow, hopefully, you will see that survey in your email inbox, and then in the following days, students, staff, parents, and other stakeholder groups will see the same thing.
Are you planning to give examples in the survey of projects that could be done for that amount of money within that item?
I'm hoping to double dip a little bit and actually solicit feedback on some of the things we've done so far with that money, which will also give examples of some allowable uses because they're the things we've done. But the answer is yes. And I'll list the 7 categories that are permissible.
I mean, we're sitting in here in a room without AC.
Well, this room has AC.
It's broken.
It was working today.
It was working this morning.
It gives us some sympathy for what the classrooms are going through today.
Yes.
For sure.
I think if we could air condition the classrooms in this building for $250,000, we'd be having an entirely different discussion about this right now, and I'd simply be asking you if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
But we know we can't. Next on my report and behind the next pink divider sheet in your packet, student teachers, interns, and observers. I'm calling this guidance because it allows me to get your blessing, not add it to our policy manual, but add it to my guidance documents for principals and other staff. But what I've done here is laid out what I expect, what we should require when, especially student teachers and interns, the section on observers is at the end. But the more common thing we see is student teachers and interns coming to our schools. So there's a requirement that the principal has to interview them. The way universities do this, sometimes they'll have that person meet with a potential cooperating teacher. And I think it's a best practice for principals to be in that interview loop, but I just want to set that expectation that that'll always happen. The principal has to sign an agreement with the student teacher or the intern's institution of higher learning, wherever they're trying to get their degree. They must be enrolled in a program in order to work in one of our schools as a student teacher or intern. They have to do a background check. I don't think that's been a problem in the past, but again, I'm kind of bringing different policies together here. The student teacher or intern is bound by all other board policies as if they were employees. Again, we've acted that way. I've treated them as employees without having a document that actually asserts that that's what I'm going to do or what we're going to do. And then finally, the last bullet, the student teacher or intern must complete all the same mandatory start of the year training that our other staff are required to do. And I've given the current list here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 topics listed, but next year it could be 11 or 12. Stay tuned. That's how these things get longer, never shorter. It used to be 4.
So if they come in January, you want them to do those trainings
Yeah,
before they get here?
I think it's actually really critically important that they do, because they're going to be held to the same standard under the law with regards to all of these things.
So would we have them do that before they started?
Yes.
Like we would provide that for them?
Yeah, so we've done it electronically. We have a Google slideshow and some online quizzes that people take. So we have a whole bunch of people in the process of finishing them right now.
Okay.
And we could just send the link to the intern or the student teacher who could do it. I did it so that I would know for sure, because sometimes teachers like to tell me how long it takes. It took 2 hours for me to do it. And I rounded up to 3, but it's not a huge amount of time.
Are they given a laptop when they come in? A school
That's a
laptop?
question I can't answer right now, whether or not we issue a Chromebook. I wouldn't be surprised if we do. I know that we create a Google account, and again, we treat them like staff with regards to accessing technology. I would imagine we probably do issue a Chromebook, but I don't know the answer to that without
I think it should be
checking.
in the procedure, because then it's crystal clear for everybody.
There are some expectations I have of supervising educators, and this has not always been the practice here. I think in order to be a mentor to somebody who's trying to become a teacher, one ought to be a tenured educator. That means at least 5 years experience and tenure in this school. So the reason I say both, for those who don't know the ins and outs of the tenure law, somebody with 5 years of experience, if they had tenure in another school and then came here, could have worked here for 3 years, and then they would be tenure eligible here, and they would meet these requirements without having been here for 5 years. What this is designed, in my mind, to avoid is an inexperienced educator trying to mentor a no-experience educator. There's an expectation here, and again, I think this is best practice. This is typically what the institutions, the universities would expect. It's what most principals would expect. But the supervising educator and student teacher or intern need to complete some kind of a weekly written record of what they've discussed and how things are going. And I want a copy of that turned into the principal so that we have that record as well. And then this last one, I'm a stickler for. I learned this in another district. If the student teacher or intern's college or university is offering our teacher something, whether it's a free class or a $500 honorarium for their extra time or something like that, that's okay, but it's got to be disclosed in that written agreement that our principal signs with the institution. Those are And then there's a line here that says that the principal or the superintendent can excuse a student, teacher, or intern at any time, and that's not going to be an appealable decision. That's a final decision. And if you would like to know stories about why I think that's necessary, I will tell them in non-public. Observers, people ask once in a while to come in, and there are a few things here about that, but basically we don't leave them alone. There's always a staff member of ours with them, and I think that's the most important thing. If they're doing research, we have state law that governs parent consent in those types of situations, so we would simply expect that those laws and regulations be followed. So this is another one. I've been promising it for months, and here it is, done.
You don't want a motion on this, do you?
It's up to you.
Procedure.
You want to bless it?
You want a motion? Sure. Okay. With the caveat that we usually don't move on procedures, I move that we approve the student, teachers, interns, and observers procedure with the amendments as discussed.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? There you have it.
Nothing has changed with regards to our open enrollment situation since last month. I have been to the Department of Education. I was there last week to talk about where we stand with regards to 3 other districts. I have another meeting there, this one with the commissioner and a couple of other members of his staff this Thursday. I've recommended some amendments to policies JFAB and JECB, which were in your packet that you received via email on Friday, and are under action items here tonight. And those are just based on some of the experiences that I've had now over the last few months. If you want to have any additional discussion of our position regarding these regulations and laws, we can do that in non-public under RSA 91A32 paragraph K. And I wrote that out in case somebody needs to say it later. Yeah.
I'll make an motion to approve policies JECB and JFAB.
Second?
Any discussion?
So what is our status with tuition for the kids? Is that a non-public question?
Yeah, I mean, we bill tuition where we have tuition agreements later in the year anyway.
Okay.
So that's not something we would be doing now.
Okay.
So right now it's just been conversations.
All right, I'm just trying to figure it out because there's a lot of gossip out in the community about tuition.
Sure.
Just thought I'd ask.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention? Seeing none.
Last spring you formed a curriculum committee. Congratulations to whoever you are. I've given all of you a pretty thick packet that I'm not going to go through, but those of you who are serving on the curriculum committee, I would invite you to take these home and take a look at them. They include policy IHBI on alternative learning plans. This is an existing policy already approved by this joint board in 2016. As of last June, there were 0 students with approved alternative learning plans attending Prospect Mountain High School. IMBC, regarding alternative credit options. IMBCR, which is the procedure to go with that policy. JEA is the compulsory attendance policy, again, already existing, last approved by the board in 2015. And then following all those policies, I've given you the state regulation 306.27, which governs high school curriculum credits, graduation requirements, and co-curricular programs. Again, not reading it to you, just providing it, but I'm going to highlight some topics you might want to look for, particularly if you're a part of that committee.
Does anybody know who
Pretty sure I am.
Well, Matt was the chairperson of the committee, and I was on it. You were on it, and was Ann on it? Ann Pierce? We had 2 and 2.
Well, there's only 2 of us from Alton, so.
Right.
I went to the first meeting.
I sat on it.
We also had student reps on the committee, remember? We had the principal there. And then we talked about teachers being included also, which we never got as far as that. We kind of stopped meeting.
Maybe tonight's the night.
Maybe it's tonight's
Maybe
night.
tonight's the night.
Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about curriculum, you have to include the teachers, in my mind. They're the ones delivering the curriculum. So then you ask yourself, how do we do that? Because, evening meeting.
So the last document in the packet is a 3-page excerpt from the Prospect Mountain High School Program of Studies, which lays out course load requirements in order to be considered a Prospect Mountain High School student. 9th, 10th, and 11th graders must be registered for 6 classes, and 12th graders must be registered for 5 classes. I will read you an excerpt from the regulation, Ed Rule 30627. In New Hampshire, a full-time student must be enrolled in 4 credits worth of classes. So you, the joint board, and former boards have the authority to set a higher standard, which I would read this you have done, although I don't find this full-time student requirement anywhere in the policy manual.
Okay.
I only find it in the program of studies. So I don't know that it was a board decision, except to the extent that the board approves the program of studies every year. So this is what I'm suggesting the curriculum committee meet with Matt more than once, dig into all these issues, and talk about these things. We had 392 students enrolled here last year, and if a senior needed 4 classes in order to graduate, I think it's possible that what we said to that student was, if you don't take another class, if you aren't willing to enroll in another class, then this isn't the place for you. And there are a lot of ramifications for that kind of thing. It might be what you want, and it is within the board's authority to make this decision. It might have to do with rigor or standards. That might be the thinking behind it. I'm not sure. I wasn't here if a board made this decision originally to hear that conversation. But I can tell you that when we report our average daily membership to the state every year, they then use that number to set our adequacy aid the following year. So every student who is enrolled here equals state aid to reduce taxation.
Right.
So I don't know. I hear people stand up here and say that it's a wonderful place for kids, and I hear people stand up here and say that their kids don't like coming to school. And I think that's probably true in every public high school, no matter where you go. I won't invite Chaley to put her on the spot tonight, but I do think if, she's just getting to know kids over the last few weeks, including today, and it is remarkable. You did a bunch of work. The reason this committee existed in the first place last year was because it became evident during the budgeting process that we had students enrolled in multiple study halls and phys ed classes. And I feel pretty safe saying that that's something the board wanted us to move away from, and we're not entirely away from it. So if a kid doesn't want to come take 2 phys ed classes, are we telling them they can't be a full-time student when you also have a policy allowing an alternative educational plan approved by the superintendent? It's existed for 7 or 8 years. I do think that there's a big topic here, and it's worthy of your consideration. It's not something that Matt and I should sit in our offices and talk about, or have a conference with Chaley and make a bunch of decisions and tell you what we think you should do. I really think this is something that you're going to want to put this committee together and spend a couple of months on it. You don't have another program of studies. It's sooner than you think, but it's really not until February, right? Going into the spring, because that's when we start talking to students about registering for classes for the next year. It does give you some time if you start in the next month or 2.
Well, we have budget to consider also.
I do.
Much sooner than that.
So I think we had 3 alternate people because you took my place when I was away, remember on one of the meetings? So you subbed in. So I think the original intent was to have 2 Barnstead and 2 Alton, correct? So,
And that's Jason, and you think you're on it. And I can be a sub.
You can take it over if you want.
and then we had a
Yeah, either
student
way,
rep.
Carol, I don't, yeah, whatever we want to do.
Okay, we can
But
talk.
we should figure it out.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
figure that
offline.
out. I'm not worried about it.
So
I'll tell you both.
Matt and Debbie can facilitate this over email. That's illegal. It's not deliberating if you all email
Yeah,
about
yeah.
when to meet and who can meet.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we can set that up in the next few weeks. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So really what we're looking at is the guidelines for graduation, essentially.
I suspect, Carol, that once you dig into it, you're going to find a half a dozen related questions
Okay.
that have to do with your philosophy of what it is you want students to achieve in order to earn this diploma.
Sure.
Is it about a college preparatory academic diploma, or is it about a variety of pathways toward a variety of outcomes, depending on what the student wants, which is the essence of personalization, which is in the first few words of the school's mission statement.
So we're including students again this year? Because Grace was on it last year. And
Yeah,
she's
I think
graduating.
the initial one will set up and kind of
Talk it out.
map out what we want to
Okay.
try to accomplish, and then we can reach out to students, we can reach out to faculty.
Okay. Sounds good.
The legislative update document was in your packet. The only 2 of you who have to worry about it right now are the 2 members of the policy committee, and it's time for our annual pizza party, which I'm going to suggest we hold in early October, because there's an NHSAA, that's the Superintendent's Association, conference on the impact of these legislative changes on sometime after the 25th of this month. So I'll be at that, and then if we could meet, say, a week later, if you're serious about this schedule for October for board meetings, that means we should have policy revision proposals based on these legislative changes all ready for all 3 board meetings in October. And we can't schedule it tonight because we need the other member, right? So we will. Is that okay? Last thing, strategic planning. So there's a joke about our request for proposals, and the punchline was $170,000. I'm not even sure we ever told you that because we were so busy laughing. But the only bid we got to facilitate strategic planning for the 3-school system was for $170,000. I made the same face.
Wow.
So we said no thank you,
Jeez, I'll take it.
and we will be doing this ourselves. And attached to my report are a draft list of strategic priorities, and it's not brand new. We've been doing the preliminary work on this now for a few years. So now it's time to put a steering committee together, engage stakeholders, and get to it. You actually voted to appoint a member from each town to the strategic planning committee last spring. And I think it was you, wasn't it, Carol?
I think
For
so.
Alton?
yeah.
And I think it was
However,
Ann.
you know, I am on the
right?
budget committee too. I don't know.
No,
I don't think it was Ann.
one from each or 2 from each?
I thought it was 1 from each.
One
but
from
I
each.
could
I think it
be
was too.
So we'll look it up.
So maybe it was.
But you're
But I'm
going to
not-
hear from both Matt and me. We'll do this together. Maybe we'll take turns with different pieces, because it's going to require, outside of a steering committee that typically I've done it before for another school district. It's just that we have so many things happening that we were trying to find somebody to facilitate for us, but we can do it. The steering committee should be about a dozen people from different roles in our school community. It will include students, it will include parents, it will include staff, it will include a couple of you at least. And we'll bring all of the information we have so far, including these draft strategic priorities, to that group. let them flesh that out, make changes, and then typically one of the first things that group will do is decide what stakeholder groups to engage and how to do it in order to get feedback. Then the steering committee comes back together, synthesizes all that feedback, and drafts the barest outline of a plan. It's really all about identifying the priorities. And it doesn't take all that long. It's just a matter of doing it. So we'll do it. It'll be much more cost effective doing it this way. So if you're on that committee, plan on evenings. I do think that's a very safe
Curriculum committee.
assumption.
Strategic plan.
How's retirement?
Retirement is great for daytime meetings, not so much for evening meetings.
My last topic.
Carol, you decide what you want.
My last topic is capital planning. You actually have a quirky thing here at the JMA that's never been quite right from what I can tell. The joint maintenance agreement that was signed back in the early 2000s requires capital costs to be divided 50-50 between Alton and Barnstead, and operating costs to be divided using percentages based on enrollment from each town. There is no separate capital budget here, and again, it's another thing that I observed and have been talking about, and we're gonna give it a shot this year. We're gonna try to break out your capital budget as a separate budget next to the operating budget. You'll still run one warrant article for the budget for the school, but in order to assess the towns according to the JMA, this is really how we're supposed to do this. So capital items should be tracked separately in a separate capital budget so that we can charge those items 50-50 to Alton and Barnstead. Conveniently, enrollment is almost 50-50, so this hasn't been a big deal. If it were the case that enrollment was 2/3 from one town and 1/3 from the other, you probably would have done this a long time ago because people would have been complaining. So we'll do it before the problem exists, but it should really be done. It probably should have been done in 2003 or whatever it was, but we'll do it now. Fortunately, my last school district had a separate capital budgeting process distinct from the operating budget process, so we'll just do the same things. We've already met once and talked about how to do it when we have the high school staff feed their information in to the budget process. So we'll figure it out. In the meantime, you know, when we go to the CIP meetings, Mr. Henry and I were at one, was that last week? We have one coming up in Alton tomorrow night, which I plan to cover.
I have no one tomorrow night.
Have fun.
Was that the
We're
same one we
only
went to last year?
Yes, we're only talking to them about potential warrant articles.
Okay.
Typically, they're not looking at $5,000 for microscopes that'll end up in the budget. They're looking at, oh, we think we need to replace all the windows in a building, and that might cost $600,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
We don't need
larger
windows. I'm using it as an example. And that plan already exists for Alton. I'm taking them the same plan. I showed it to the Alton board at your last meeting during
I wasn't there.
August.
But last year,
so-
the chairperson went to the capital improvement.
It's-
went as chair.
I'm planning to cover it. It's
Okay.
fine. So
It's pretty innocuous.
the current capital plan is attached to my memo. It needs some revision, but we're just entering the annual budget cycle, so this is when we ask people for input. So everything I highlighted in pink by hand with my highlighter over there on the left, these are all items that we'd be looking at with, it just so happens, all new people. Chaley, John Larson, the athletic director, and Matt Dumond in IT. So this will get updated before we propose the annual budget. But again, we all know that now is not the time for us to bring big capital, to propose big capital expenses for this high school. We have other fish that need to be fried here first. I'm done.
I'd recommend that the model names be removed from the items in the capital plan too, just generic phrases.
Any mess with the superintendent? People are melting over there. All right, then moving on to action items. PELOs for Alton Dance Academy. wants to talk about that?
I will, I guess.
All right.
So you have before you the setup for our extended learning opportunity through the Alton Dance Academy. Again, we're looking at dance education. This falls under the extended learning opportunities, which is all part of the Pathways program and part of your policy already. And again, the idea of our mission is to provide an opportunity for personalized education, giving kids the opportunity to receive credit in areas outside of the school that they're passionate about, that we may or may not offer is really the focus that we're looking at. Part of the ELO process is also, there's a format to it. It's not just I decided to go and have an ELO and here it is. So there's a process to it. So part of it is paperwork. Mom and dad have to approve that they go part of that. There are self-assessments. There are assessment by the instructor, and all of that is factored into it. There's also sort of at the end a reflective piece so that the child can express what he or she may have learned throughout the process. So working with the ADA, we looked at these different categories in terms of competencies and what the students would be asked to do as a result of participating in this ELO program. One of the things that students would be able to do is if they met the requirement, in the first go-around they would actually get 0.5 credit, half a credit, that would go towards their PE requirement. They would have a half a credit here, and they could also receive that half a credit outside of the school, similar to that of our athletics. And so that would be there. But then, beyond that, there are additional classes that they could go and choose based off of their interests. Similar to that of our current policy with athletics, phys ed, they could do an additional 3 classes outside of that, and those would be for elective credits towards their graduation. Again, same process. They'd have to go through the paperwork. They'd have to do self-reflections, self-assessments. The instructor would do assessments on that piece of it. So we're hoping with your blessing that we get this going sooner rather than later. The school counseling department is aware of this. We've been in constant contact with them. They have the paperwork that they'll be working with the Alton Dancing Academy. And again, our hope is that this is our template that we will use now, that we can go out into the community and look at other resources, other businesses and things of that nature to provide internships for our kids, ELOs and things of that nature. It doesn't always have to be an ELO, it can be an internship, and there's other criteria. It can be work too, so we can work some things on that as well. So I'm just looking.
I move that we approve the ELOs for the Alton Dance Academy.
Second.
Further discussion?
I just want to say I think it's a great idea. These kids put a lot of hours into their dance, believe me. And they're very dedicated, so is the dance instructors. So are the dance instructors. Very impressive.
Thank you to everyone involved too. I remember talking about this at the curriculum committee meetings, and it was an idea, and it's to see it come to fruition. And there's so many hands, thank you to Ashley at the studio. There's a lot of kids that are very excited about this. So I just want to say thank you.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No. Passes. Thank you. Looks like we got policies here for first readings.
I think we went through all those.
Did all those.
Did all those. Fantastic. Second readings. We haven't done those.
So I'll move policy GACA, insurance buyout, for second reading.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Passes.
I move policies GBEF, staff, computer, and communication, for second reading.
Second.
I do have one suggestion. Oftentimes we have a -R procedure to go with a policy, where we start with Appendix 1, password security. Those are things that might change much more frequently. So I'd recommend you take everything from there on and make it a -R so that we don't have to approve your password policy, that kind of thing.
Are you asking that we stop bringing -Rs to the board?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, informational would be fine, but those things could just change quite a bit.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
I move policy JICL for second reading. This is a -R. Same comment I made in Alton. Actually, I think you took the pricing out of here. And signatures. I just don't believe that kids should and parents should have to sign a policy. A technology policy is already part of the student handbook. You shouldn't have to call it out. It's not 2001 where computers are a new thing. It's just part of being at school. It should just be included in the student handbook.
So are you suggesting an amendment to the policy?
Yeah, I mean, I just still see a signature on the back page.
Yeah, it's on the back.
Yeah, but they shouldn't. I understand the insurance if you're going to charge a fee for damage kind of thing, but for a policy, it's just like any other policy in the school.
Any comments on that? I agree. You agree? Just asking. All right, so any other comments, concerns?
So we have to amend them.
Okay. You taking the recommendation? Yep. Okay, take the recommendation and change it. All in favor of the policy?
Aye.
Oh, second.
We not have a second first. It's getting hot. All right, it passes. Whew. All right, moving on here. Personnel, 23-24, new hires.
Have one item to add.
Oh boy.
I need you to accept a resignation on Friday, August 15th, 6 business days before our first orientation day with returning staff. English teacher Kayla Roy resigned, which is why Shaylee Davis was talking about offering a position to an English teacher who's moving here from Kansas to take the job.
I move we accept the resignation of Kayla Roy retroactively.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I'll just blow through these.
Okay.
I move we accept the 23-24 new hires.
Second. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
I move we accept the athletic department stipends, 2 of them.
Second. Any discussion? Nope. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for
Opposed?
sharing.
Nope.
I move we accept the co-curricular stipends,
Second.
a bunch of them.
A bunch of them.
Any questions, concerns,
As written,
comments?
yeah. No?
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Okay. We are at our second public input.
While I'm here, I'm just going to mention, this would be building and grounds, but the flag out here just off the soccer field is getting faded and should probably be replaced. And I will tell you, this was brought to my attention by a veteran, so I just wanted to share it with you. I was walking the track over the weekend for exercise, and I just want to pass that along to building and grounds. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure it gets replaced. Any other public input? Seeing none, I will close the public input. Future agenda items, athletic logos, athletic programs, strategic planning, still on there? Yes. Shared services? Yep. Building and grounds.
Staff dress code, I'd asked that it be added, but forgot to add it to the agenda.
So you want to add for next agenda?
Staff dress code?
What about the meeting
I sent an
schedule?
email the other day.
We
So,
have to talk about it.
okay, we can do that under, I can do it on business.
Future meeting dates, your last thing,
Just wanted to mention that.
Okay, so
when you get there.
staff dress code added on to there. Buildings and grounds, we need to set a meeting for that. Also, on there was added on underneath this was also for, we have athletics committee for the other, that's other business plus schedule, all right. Anything else for follow-up items?
I just have a question about the public input about exit interviews. Did we have any requests for exit interviews?
I did not.
Typically, what happens is if someone wants to talk to the board, they ask to come. We don't solicit that.
Well, let's also go on record that we reached out to the little Facebook group offering to meet with these disgruntled people, and nobody responded or took us up on that, so.
We mentioned it here in our meetings too, if anybody wanted to, we would do them as well, so.
But that would be done in non-public, I'm assuming, right? So if anyone, for the public record, if anyone wants an exit interview, they have to contact us. We don't typically, that's not protocol, to contact other people.
I would recommend it as part of standard protocol when anybody leaves, resigns.
To have it done,
Mhm.
right? Which is fine, if that's what the board wants.
And I think we wanna make sure we're keeping public input to the 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's my fault today, I forgot to mention
Yeah,
it at the
no,
beginning.
that's okay, I think we let her
I nudged,
go on a
but
little long.
Yeah, because I forgot to,
we
That's
forgot to
fine.
time it, it was my fault, I should have
No
timed it.
worries.
and I should have read it, so. I said, Ms. Huffman, I leaned over and went, I should have.
Yeah, we both were like,
I'm like,
oh,
Cheryl,
shoot. Yeah, she's giving me dirty looks over here, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
So, all right, so other business, two things, I can see for other business. One was, you want to bring up for athletic committee, Lauren?
I wanted to have a committee to help represent the athletics, if anyone else is interested in joining. I wanted to do a athletic committee to help represent the students on the athletics, if anybody was interested in discussing having a committee for that.
It feels like a new, era in athletics. I'm wondering if we can make something K through 12 and even even if it's just one sort of public input forum or something, have a chance for people to give stakeholder input.
So Lauren, what was your vision on that committee? You want parents?
To work with buildings and grounds,
Okay,
where the students that are playing have a place we can bring up issues specifically for playing fields, not just for, issues like the flagpole would be buildings and grounds as well, but it's like a subcommittee of buildings and grounds.
okay.
But
Stuff like football would be a good
That's part of
thing
it,
to
yeah,
add to that too.
it's interesting.
might I suggest that we hold off for a little bit and let the athletic director get his feet wet for a couple months and think about and craft what you're kind of looking for, so we can make it a little more formal.
Okay.
We'll bring it to the next meeting.
Yeah, we can put it on agenda for next meeting if you come with some, just kind of your vision, what you're looking for, so we can have a healthy discussion on it. Does that work?
Sure. Does anyone have any interest in joining me? Because if I'm going to be the only one, then we don't need to put it on the agenda.
Don't worry, every committee has to have one person from each town.
I mean, I can join you, Lauren. I mean, right now I'm doing strategic planning, curriculum, budget committee. I'll just give the budget committee back to Rebecca, right? But I'll be happy to join you. I have grandchildren in sports. I mean, it's my life right now.
So let's add on for next agenda to talk about.
Maybe you and I could have coffee with the AD director. Is that what you want to do? Talk to him about it?
And then we also now, if we're gonna do that, we talk about the schedule.
Future meeting date.
I mean, I'm perfectly fine keeping it the way it is.
So-
I thought the administration wanted to change. That's my impression when we first started talking about it. Because you guys aren't able to take vacations. You have spread out of all these meetings. We thought we were overdoing it for you.
I think it works better for people who want to take vacations too.
Right.
I mean, board members.
Well, I just don't come. I'm on vacation.
There's that.
You know, it's as simple as that.
Well, I mean, we have at least one person whose husband is at sea a lot, and, you know, I think the planning would be easier. I have a new job where I can work remotely, so I can go.
What I heard last time we were talking about it was that Heidi was going to be conflicted about where to go, correct? Is that what I was
You
hearing?
can tell her where to go.
And we resolved that.
You did resolve that?
Yep, so we would go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the third week of the month.
Okay.
Alton, Prospect, Barnstead. And that allows us to be in each school at the 3 different locations.
Okay, so you do 3 days, okay.
It means, you know, it means we're prepping for 3 meetings simultaneously. We'll see.
I mean,
But we might find when we're living it that it's actually not as bad as it might
but
sound.
see, I don't think we should make it bad. That's what I'm saying. It's
I
gonna
just
be
don't know that it will be, Carol. So for one thing, we will use a consent agenda. I don't think there's any question that that makes sense for things like policy, especially when there's going to be so much duplicated in the 3 packets. I mean, if we can just highlight what those items are and make those consent items, then if at the Alton meeting there's a need to discuss something, you can pull it out, right? The next night you could tell the folks from Barnstead that that happened and what became of it, if anything, and then they'd have the next night to figure out. I mean, worst case scenario, it puts something off for a month, maybe, but that's sort of the nature of your business anyway. You know, reports have to be run, but those reports can be run. I think the hang up is, you know, us feeling like they're complete enough or ready, but the reality is that every report's a snapshot taken at the moment we make the report.
So what about committee meetings? We would still have those before
Right before each meeting?
each meeting? Would you be able to do that, Lauren?
On those dates that you gave me,
Third week of,
except for the conflict I already told you about.
right. Okay.
I'd like to try it. I think
We can try it.
You know.
I mean, you know, it's not
So-
a bad thing.
So for October, that'll be the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th. So the next JMA meeting would be Tuesday, the 17th of October. So the 2 of you who show up on the 3rd, everybody else gets to make fun of you?
That'll be me.
Well, I'm on vacation that week, but I do like having it all in one
So who's going on
week.
Monday?
doesn't work.
Normally it's
Yeah.
more.
Well, and you have 7 out of 10 here tonight, so that's typical.
You said yes, we're doing Mondays. You guys are doing.
We're doing Mondays, you're doing Wednesdays.
You're doing Mondays?
There was
no, wait a
discussion
minute.
at
That's
one
what
of
I
your other meetings, I forget which, I'm sorry, last month, of trying it not just for 1 month and seeing how it feels, but trying it for at least a few months, giving it until February or maybe even a date certain that you all pick right now.
I think at least until the election, you know, in March.
Whoa. So it's a commitment there, I don't know. We just play this by ear, see how it goes.
What were the dates again? I didn't have a
Because
pen that
everybody
worked.
has to
What were the
plan
dates?
around it, and
16th, 17th, 18th.
I certainly would like to plan a winter vacation, and, you know, I think it's just
You got a new
helpful
job,
if
you have
people
no
can
vacation.
plan.
So you can work from the
So is
vacation.
ACS, is ACS the 60?
Yes.
Yes.
So we're the Monday, Barnes is the Wednesday.
In November, though, Barnstead will be the 15th. And then Prospect will be the 21st.
Yeah, see, that's where there are some conflicting if you do
That's
the
the hol,
third.
that's the night before Thanksgiving, is
Because of
that what you're
Thanksgiving.
saying?
Well, if you start, no, if you count, depending on where it falls, right?
Because November 1st is a Wednesday. And I don't think you'd want it the day before Thanksgiving.
No.
How about this? How about you send us the dates of what those months you want it to be at, so we have it written down.
So we have your, whichever one of you took notes
And Pierce.
at your
took the
August
notes,
meeting,
right.
Debbie has that sheet. So we're just confirming right now that
third
We're gonna
Tuesday.
try this in October. Debbie will send out the schedule through March in an email,
And see how it works.
and we'll see what it looks like.
My question would be on a 5-week month, do you want the third or the fourth week? Because October is that case.
I guess it would make sense.
November is what she just said. If
We
you
don't,
start
yeah, we don't
counting.
want holidays or Mondays, so we have to
No, we're
figure that out.
starting in October.
We're starting in October.
We're
But
starting,
October, we already have the
October.
dates.
we have the dates for October.
Yeah.
And we'll look at it. If we need any clarification, we'll send
Because there'll be
emails.
Monday holidays too,
Yeah.
and that will interfere. Like there's Columbus Day, so we're missing Columbus Day with these dates. Every day's a holiday for me.
And for JMA on the 17th, we will have to have a buildings and grounds meeting that day.
Okay, there we go, Lauren, we get to go building a ground.
At 6?
At 6?
Is that a 6?
Why not?
I
I think we can
5:30?
do it.
Is ours 5:30?
6. With
We
Sean,
Or before the meeting?
Half hour?
Is this meeting at 6:30?
This meeting's at 6:30.
we've always met at 6 before.
Okay.
6.
You said half an
Seems
hour
awfully
before.
short.
6.
Yeah, but he wants
We will. Yeah, that's why, because you did, yeah, you did 5:30, 6, when you started doing the meetings.
So 6?
6 o'clock.
Anything else for the good of the order? Do we have anything for non-public?
It's up to you. I gave you the code if you want to go there with questions, but
We have the future meeting date. I'm just waiting for somebody to make a motion to
I'll make
adjourn.
a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.